Hey everybody, I'm Gary McLean, and you're watching Talent Talk. Just a reminder that if you haven't done so already, please do go to the Talent Talk YouTube channel and subscribe today. As always, your support is appreciated. And another reminder that this is a live and interactive show. So if you have any questions, comments, or just want to say hi at any point during the interview, go ahead and throw your comments or questions into the comment section, and we'll try to address it as we can as we kind of go along. Now, today's guest, well, he is a rock and roll Hall of Famer from his time with the original member of Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band, and he's worked with the likes of Eric Clapton, Sting, Peter Gabriel, Santana, Seal, just to name a handful of legendary musicians. And having started it with music at the early age of 6, he's gained a wealth of musical knowledge and has developed that into his recently released 10th album, Eyes Wide Open. So please join me in welcoming David Sancious.
Hey,
Hey, David, how you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing okay. Whereabouts you located right now? Are you in LA or?
I live in Hawaii. This is my
Oh,
second
Hawaii.
year.
Yes, I actually knew that.
Yeah, I live on the island of Kauai. Yeah.
And how is it right now?
Well, it's beautiful. I mean, the weather here is crazy gorgeous almost every single day. It's a bit rainy today, but it's the sort of season. We're in our fall season. It's the early beginning of whale watching season for people who are
Okay.
doing that. So, no, but it's nice. The weather's fine. It's just a bit wet today.
And have you done a lot of whale watching yourself, or?
A little bit. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
a little bit.
Do you scuba dive at all as well?
I don't scuba dive, but I snorkel.
Okay. Well, that'd be all right
Snorkel.
too.
My wife and I kind of discovered snorkeling since we moved here a couple of years ago through some other friends. So yeah, we're snorkel like crazy. And I think I will one of these days. I will get into scuba diving. That's down the road a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. And do you live right off the beach, kind of, or
We
you
are
in
about
inland?
5 minutes. We're about 5 minutes from the ocean. We live sort of on a top of a hill, sort of a hilly area where we are. We're sort of above the town, and but we can see the ocean from our house. But get in the car, and literally, it's like 3 to 4 minutes, and pow, you're on the beach. It's great.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. Well, let's kind of get started into your career. You started at roughly around the age of 6, right? I think you may even started a little bit before that.
No, I started. Yeah, officially I started when I was 6 years old. My mother started giving me piano lessons because I used to sit around and watch her play for hours, you know. And when I was young, especially, my mother was a good piano player. She's a teacher by profession, but she had learned to play piano when she was a teenager, and she played really well. When I was 6 years old, I mean, my mom, it was wonderful to sit here and listen to her play like Chopin and Beethoven and different stuff. And one day I just tried to copy what she did on the piano. And then she came back in the kitchen and showed me the real formal way to do what I was trying to do. And that was the start of it. I think she taught me for a year. And then she got lessons for me with this classical virtuoso um, that she knew.
Okay. So that was your first instrument all around and piano. And then did you move on to any other instruments shortly after that, or did you just focus on piano for a few years and then?
No, I was also crazy about guitar.
Okay.
So I started playing guitar. Guitar was really attractive to me because it was so portable. You know, I like the fact that you could just take your guitar and walk away with it and tune it yourself. You didn't have to call. You didn't have to call someone to tune your guitar. It was just so easy. If you want your piano goes out of tune. It sounds sometimes pianos so out of tune you can't play it. I mean, you can't even practice on it. It sounds so ridiculous. But you don't have that issue with the guitar. So that was really attractive to me, and I just liked the music of the time that was going on with guitars. You know, I liked the rock and roll of the time. The big Beatles fan, and then of course when Hendrix came along and Cream and Jeff Beck and all that, I was crazy for all that. So, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And yeah, Hendrix was kind of one of your idols, if I remember reading
Huge.
correctly.
Yeah, yes, yes, one of the main, like
Influences.
an influence for sure, but an inspiration also. Not I don't know if the difference. He definitely influenced me, but he also inspired me to be an artist, to be a musician.
And so when was do you recall the first time you actually performed live, whether it's by yourself or with family or church or wherever it may have been?
Wow, my very first live performance of anything.
Yeah,
What a question! I haven't heard that question in a long time. That's not
excellent.
the very first one. Give me a second here. Okay, I would have had to be okay. Wow, man, you took me all the way back to grammar school. Okay. So it wouldn't have been anything where like, people were paying tickets to come and see me, but it was live. But the first time I can remember I have to be in my grammar school. Um, it was a choir class. I think I was probably maybe like in either seventh or eighth grade. Okay. And my kids knew that I played piano. And I could also sort of play like popular stuff off the radio. I could play like bits of Motown songs and stuff, and they were sort of fascinated by that. So there's a song called "The In Crowd" by Ramsey Lewis, this jazz pianist of the time. I don't know if you're familiar with him at all, and it was actually on the radio. It was an instrumental hit record. He had two hits. He had a hit called "Wade in the Water," and then he had a hit called "The In Crowd." Anyway, I think it was the in crowd that I played. So the kids knew that I played piano, and there was a piano at the back of the room in choir class. And so I would get there and sort of noodle around. And the kids said to our teacher, he said, "Hey, let David play the piano. He knows how to play the in crowd." And she said, "Oh, if you knuckleheads behave for the rest of the class, all right, I'll let him play the piano for a few minutes before we go." And sure enough, yeah, I got on the piano and I played "I'm in with the in crowd," but it was the instrumental. It was also a vocal hit by Dobie Gray.
Okay.
It was a vocal hit as well. But that had to be the first time where like I played this little thing and they all clapped and everything. Uh, Hard to remember my first professional gig because I was very much illegal in clubs for quite a few years before I could legally be in a club and play. Um, but my father, oh, I remember another time, but again, this wasn't a performance. My dad used to take me to this jazz club with him in Asbury Park. It's called the Orchid Lounge. And I was way underage, but my father knew the owner of the club. And my mom was okay with me being out with my father, like late at night, listening to music. So I had begun to get, kind of okay on the Hammond organ. And there was this great organist named Lonnie Smith, Dr. Lonnie Liston Smith. And he had this organ trio. It was organ, drums, and I think he had saxophone. And they let me sit in at the end of one set. They let me sort of sit in on part of a song in this jazz club. And I remember too, I was trying to, this is really early days. I'm far from like developed to what came later, what I can do now, certainly. But I was trying to play this one specific inversion of a chord. It's a C major dominant 7 with a +6. It's a chord you hear a lot in jazz. And I've been trying to find this specific inversion of it. There's many ways you can play C dominant 7. There's a bunch of ways. And Lonnie Smith could see that I was searching for this right chord. And while I was sitting in, he came up and put his right hand behind on my shoulder, and he put my hand in a position. He showed me that, oh, that's what you want. And I was like, the lights came on. And so I finished sitting in with them. They were very gracious. I went home, and we used to get home at like 2:30, early in the morning. This is a weekend now. It's like, Friday night. I'm out with my dad, Saturday night sometimes too. As soon as I got home from that night, I put my hand in that position, and it's like, okay, finally. And I made myself understand that chord inversion in every single key, like C, B, B flat, A, G, right on down until I understood, okay, wherever I am, if I want to get to that inversion, this is how it is.
Nice, nice. And so, from what I'm gathering from what you've been saying, your parents were very supportive and nurturing and trying to develop
Yeah,
your musical.
yes, they were.
And is it a kind of a family thing as well? Like your siblings, are they kind of musical as well, or?
They're all musical, but no one else was professional except myself, with the exception of my oldest brother, who he passed away a couple of years ago. But at the end of his career, he was an architect for most of his life. But after he retired from that, he became professionally playing saxophone, tenor saxophone. He lived in San Francisco, and he did a lot of that before he passed away. But apart from that, I'm the only one who went into it, full time professionally. Like, this is how I eat, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
So going into a question of, and I, you've probably heard this one numerous times. I know Rolling Stone, who you did an interview with not that long ago,
yeah.
also asked the same question. But maybe you can tell us about how you met Springsteen and how that all came about.
Hmm.
How old were you
Well,
when you first met him?
okay, sort of condensed version of that. I was, let's see, I had to be about 15, 15 when I met him. And I met him in this club called Upstage in Asbury Park, New Jersey, that we all used to go to. It was the one place where musicians would try and go and, get a chance to play live and play with other people and, try and get your stuff together. And I had met Gary Talent, the bass player in the E Street Band. I had met Gary maybe a couple of weeks before that. The night I met Bruce, we had done we'd done a recording session for someone, some private person who happened to have a recording studio in their basement. And Gary was on the session, I was on the session. We met and hit it off right away. So this one particular night, it was summertime. I actually walked. It was about 8 miles from Belmar to Asbury Park. But it was summertime, middle of summer, and I'm like, 15 years old. I didn't care. I didn't have a bike. I didn't have a car. I was too young to drive. So I walked all the way to this place. And I walked in this one night, and Gary and Bruce were standing at top of the stairs. Now, I knew who Bruce was because Bruce was very famous locally way before he was famous, worldwide. And I'd seen him play before. So I walk up top of the stairs. And Bruce introduces me, Gary introduces me to Bruce and said, "This is my friend Davey." And Bruce goes, "Hey, nice to meet you. We're organizing a jam session for the next period. This thing used to go on for hours." And he said, "You want to sit in? You want to play?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And that jam session turned into about 3 hours of jamming, seriously. And I think when it ended, at about 5 in the morning. The place used to open. It used to open from 9. It was a reverse 9 to 5. It used to open from 9 at night until midnight, and it was like a coffee house, lower part. And then they had to shut down. Everybody had to get out of the building. It was this crazy kind of New Jersey liquor law thing. So everybody had to get out of the building for an hour. And then you could come back in at 1 o'clock, and it was open from 1 to 5. But then it was this psychedelic rock club on the next level up. It was crazy. And so when I met Bruce, that was the start of that 1 o'clock session. And we easily played for, at least 3 hours, different people coming off and on. And yeah, that was really it.
And being 15, I know it was kind of a different time then, but like, what did your parents think of you hanging out with this at least local rock star really at the age of 15? Like, did they know him, or what was the comfort level there?
My parents, first of all, were trying desperately to get me back into high school because I dropped
Ah,
out of high school when I was 15. And which that's a whole other story, which maybe we don't have too much time for. Maybe we'll see. But no, and my parents, again, they were supportive musically of me and certainly interested and appreciative of my development. They could see I was developing all the time because I was taking piano lessons. I was studying stuff on my own. I was interested in jazz. I'm listening to records. I'm getting uh, literature from my friends who actually, well, I have a friend who went to music school, Berkeley School of Music. And I found out what was their curriculum, and I ordered the same books. I had like the Principles of Orchestration, the Thesaurus of Scales, a bunch of books, and I went at that on my own, stuff like that. So they saw that and appreciated it, but they always had this thing of like, they didn't think that like being a musician was the most sort of foolproof way financially to have a nice life. And I was like, so there were whole, you know, what parents say, you got to have something to fall back on. And my thing was, well, I'm not falling back. First of all, if I fall at all, I'm falling forward. And when I finish falling forward, I'll get up and keep going forward. And they just actually saw that happen. And at some point, I'm really happy that it happened as early as it did. They got to see a lot of my success. They saw my success with Bruce. They saw my success with Peter Gabriel. They saw me play Carnegie Hall with Sting, and you know, they saw a lot of stuff. You know,
Right.
I was able to take my dad. But this is going back to the '80s now. But the original Soul Tour with Peter Gabriel, we played it's a place called the Meadowlands in New Jersey. And that was our first place playing there. And I was able to take my dad and one of his best friends, who used to let me hang out with them on the weekends and listen to records, you know, listen to jazz records and just talk about music and stuff. I was able to get them to see, you know, front row seats to see the Soul Tour, which they were blown away, because that's a hell of a production. You know, the original Soul Tour was the lights and the staging and everything. It was amazing. So yeah, you know, they were not crazy about my decision, you know, that I made, but they were always supportive. And again, they got to see it work out. You know, they got to see
Right.
me not fail, kind of thing.
And so, when did E Street kind of come to fruition, and you know, you becoming a member of that?
Well, pretty much, excuse me, it didn't get to be called the E Street Band for a bit down the road. But as far as how that came into fruition, at the end of that first night that I met Bruce, at the end of this long jam session, we were walking back. I mean, it was 5 in the morning, the sun's coming up, and now we're all figuring out where we're going to go to some diner and eat pancakes until we go home and collapse or whatever, or go to the beach and sleep. And so we're walking towards somebody's car, and he says to me, "Hey, you know, I'm getting ready to stop this band I have." He had a very popular band called Steel Mill, and they were very popular locally. And he says, "Yeah, I'm doing something different musically. I'm getting ready to stop that, and I'm going to start something new." And he said, "Would you be interested in playing keyboards in it?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely."
And that's at
And
15.
15, 16-ish, somewhere in there. Yeah.
Nice. I mean, obviously, yeah. I mean, he must have seen that raw talent that was going on there, and wow, that's
Yeah,
impressive.
well, I think we saw that in each other. I mean, Bruce was easily the best guitar player at the time. There were three really good guitar players back in the time: Bruce Springsteen, Ricky DeSarno, and forgive me, I'm forgetting the other guy's name. But you know, there was nobody else like him. You know, he was so much more developed as a songwriter and a singer and a player than everybody else. So whatever he saw in me, I saw that in him as well, and I thought this would be a good person to work with. You know, to
Right.
to be around. You know.
Absolutely. So how long did your tenure, last with E Street?
I get confused about what year I left. And you quiz me on what year I started, because again, we worked a lot in these different configurations. Before he decided to call it the E Street Band, and then we did. There was a point where he said, "Okay, he wanted to formally call it that, you know, a name." Uh, and all right, so then the first album came out, second album, and I left when Born to Run was released, but we had actually recorded the track Born to Run for the previous album, The Wild, the Innocent, and the E Street Shuffle. But we had started recording it then, but it wasn't finished, and Bruce wasn't finished writing it. Just wasn't finished working on it. But the basic tracks were done. And then that got finished. And then somewhere in that interim, when I was still playing with Bruce, I remember there was a club in New York called The Bottom Line. and it was like a famous music place. Everybody played there. All the rock acts, even Miles Davis, jazz acts, any great music happened at the Bottom Line. And we did a run of, I think, 5 nights in a row, sold out the Bottom Line. And somewhere in that run of 5 nights, maybe towards the last one, I got approached by an A&R guy from Columbia Records, who had heard a demo tape of songs that I'd written, and like about maybe a year and a half before. I was living in Richmond, Virginia for a while, and I got a demo tape together. And he asked me, "So are you still writing songs of your own?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely. I always do that." And he said, "Well, we really like what we heard, but we want to offer you some time to do a better quality demo." And that was the start of my. I accepted the offer for it. I did a new demo for them, and they liked it. Excuse me. And then that was my the start of my first records, like Forest of Feelings and Transformation, and all that stuff started. Yeah.
And so, speaking of your first album, can you speak a little bit to what your motivation was for the first album, and where, like, did you have a goal as to where you wanted that album to go in terms of listeners and such?
No, I didn't have any sort of like a spreadsheet kind of plan that I was hoping, part A, part B, part C. And in fact, what it was just, it was a collection of what I've been working on, because I always wrote, I was writing my music way before I met Bruce or any of the other musicians of that time. And it was always my intention to make records and to have a band and tour and do what I do. So when the first album came out, really it was just like I didn't have a plan other than like present this collection of songs. I thought these are my best offerings as compositions at the time, and I was very excited to share it.
And I mean, you were quite busy once that first album was kind of released. I think you put out another 3 albums not long afterwards.
Well, also though, I got busy because that first album, Forest of Feelings, was really how I met a bunch of other people and how I got invited to other projects. Forest of Feelings came out, and then so through Forest of Feelings, I met Peter Gabriel, I met Stanley Clarke, Lenny White, and somebody I'm not thinking of right now, but I got invited to work on their records because of what they heard on Forest of Feelings. And Peter Gabriel actually sent a telegram. That's how long ago it was. I got a call from the record company saying, "We have a telegram here for you from Peter Gabriel, and he wants to meet you. He heard your album, and he's very interested in working with you on a project that he's doing. He was leaving Genesis, and he was about to do his first solo album, and that's how we met. And he wanted me to perform on that. I didn't end up doing that because of a schedule conflict between my band, between Tone. We had a touring schedule set that we really couldn't break. And his production schedule, he was recording in Canada with, I think, Bob Ezrin. And, Peter and I met, and we got on famously straight away. We're friends to this very day. And since that time, I've done so much stuff with him. But that particular project didn't work, but we stayed in touch. And then eventually we did end up doing stuff. And the same thing, I got a call from Stanley Clarke. I was in Belmar in my basement, in my mother's house in the basement. And she used to let us keep instruments down there and they, play and rehearse and stuff. And I'm down there with my friends just messing around. Now, I had already done the record. The record was out. And my mom knocks on the basement door. He goes, "David, there's someone on the phone for you, and it's Stanley Clarke." And he was, yeah, and I went up, and my friends was like, "Whoa, Stanley Clarke's on the phone." And that was meeting him. And then he asked me to play on his first solo album, which was called Journey to Love, I think. Journey to Love. And on Journey to Love, was funny. I didn't play any keyboards on that record. I just played guitar. I think I played on 2 songs. It was Jeff Beck played guitar in it, and I played on this song called Concerto for Jazz Rock Orchestra.
Okay.
And then on school days, and he asked me to do the next record and then do a tour with him. Then on school days, I think I played all the keyboards and guitar on maybe 2 songs, something like that. And then Lenny White called me, and I actually met, I think it was Lenny White got in touch with me for his solo album, Venusian Summer. I think I actually did Lenny's project first, and then Lenny turned Stanley onto me or something like that. And then all that stuff happened. So,
Okay. Wow.
yeah.
There's like, man, the list just goes on and on of who you've worked with. I mean, some of the other ones that kind of stuck out for me, like Aretha Franklin, Patti LaBelle. I can't remember if I mentioned Sting before or not, but working with
Yes.
him. Um, and I've based on what I was kind of looking at, like I said, your solo records, you did 3 or 4, I think, within a fairly short time frame. But then you had a bit of a gap between, I think, 81 and 2000, roughly,
Yeah.
for your solo albums. But I know
Yeah,
you were super busy with working with these
exactly.
other folks.
Yeah, that was the beginning of a whole very interesting and musically interesting and very lucrative time of touring. People were asking me to do concert tours. Not that we would do the album, and then all right, the album's done. We're going to go on tour, and these tours can go on for many, many months. And it's a good life if you have that kind of work. If you're fortunate enough to work with a major artist who has a hit record going, it's
Right?
pretty cool. It's pretty nice. So yeah, there was a lot of that starting in early '80s. The first kind of big tour I did like that was with Santana. Uh, and then stuff happened, and it was also a busy session time as well. This was back in the day when people would put you on an airplane and just fly you all over the world to do sessions. We'll fly you to Italy for 4 weeks and do somebody's session, and you're meeting artists that you sort of weren't aware of or kind of peripherally knew of, but you're just doing a lot of work, and there was a lot of stuff going on. And I worked in Italy like crazy from the early '80s through the '80s, and then in the '90s. A lot of stuff in England. And once I started working with Peter, I was in England like crazy. I almost moved there for a while. I had a lovely girlfriend there that we had a nice relationship for a few years. So I spent a lot of time there. But yeah, I digress. I think I might have lost your question.
No, no, it's all good. In regards to, I lost my train of thought. um, so I guess one of the other questions I kind of have is, you did so much traveling and so forth over the years. Is that something that ever became kind of tiresome? Like, were you sick of planes and hotels and
No, no.
no?
I got to tell you honestly, no. Now here. I'll answer the question really super honestly. First of all, I love travel. I love to travel. And I love. I said something in that Rolling Stone interview I did last year, where the interviewer asked me, he goes, "Do you miss it all? How badly is all this COVID taking the whole life away from you?" And I said, "He said, what do you miss about it?" I miss all of it. I miss the plane. I miss the car ride from my house to the plane to the airport. I miss the plane flight itself from New York to London or Paris or wherever the hell we're going. I miss that. I miss meeting up with my friends as, oh, here comes Dominic from, wherever he's coming from. And you hang out in the airport. I miss us all going to the hotel, having dinner. I miss sound checks. I miss rehearsals. And I miss the great shows that we do when we get to play live. So no, there comes a point, if it's a very long project, again, here's really being honest, as much as I love it all, there's a certain physicality to touring. You're playing night after night, and maybe you're in a certain territory for 2-3 days, maybe not. Maybe you're in France, you come in France like early Monday morning, you do a show, and you might be leaving later that night, or you might stay the next day and then leave. It's different. But the physicality of doing show after show after show, you even have a schedule like that. You do 3 shows in a row, and you have to have 2 days off. because it's like sort of cruelty to animals at some point. You can't just do an intense show. 5 in a row is unheard of. You're really going to take it on the chin there, and that you can really hurt yourself. But especially a big production like a Peter Gabriel show. Peter's show is like over 2 hours, right? And it's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of places where you have to be at a certain point on the stage. You have to always know your music and where you are in that. It's the same thing with Sting. Sting's show is very physical. It's very athletic. You sweat. I bring a towel to a Sting sound check. Because you're gonna sweat. It's very energetic music, and but yeah, you do get to a point where it's okay. You get to that point where you are really ready for a break. Whether the break is like, excuse me, you're gonna have a break of 2 weeks now because we have to send all the equipment from Europe to America. And that takes weeks. If they put it on a boat, that takes some time. If they fly it over, whatever. But you're going to get a break so we can reset up the whole production in the next territory. But apart from just that physical thing, and you're happy for that when it comes. But in general, no, I like the life. I like traveling so much, and I like playing so much. I like playing with other musicians, that's really fun. And you meet these people and you work with them over years and you become friends. You become friends for life. You get very close to people. And, you work on maybe some people you met in one project, you might end up working with them on a whole other project with a whole other artist,
Right.
So, and then again, all that does is sort of deepen the friendship and the experience. So.
Right. Yeah. It's like you said. I mean, I'm assuming pretty much every time you work with somebody else, it's a networking opportunity to meet somebody else. And
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it can be. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, another brain fart. What was my next question? Well, I'll probably remember it in a minute, so I'm going to skip ahead to your new album. Actually, let's kind of touch base on that. So this is your 10th album.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of curious, and for the folks watching, the title is Eyes Wide Open. And what was your kind of motivation for this album?
The motivation for this album was really after the election in 2016 when Donald Trump won. I was devastated, really, really devastated. And I sort of hid myself away in the studio for about 3 days. I didn't see anyone except for my wife, really. And it just took a while to accept that it could have gone so wrong in such a negative direction. And I'd had, bits of some of the songs some of the vocal songs that are on Eyes Wide Open and some of the instrumentals as well. But that whole election result really just put a fire under me to finish my ideas, finish a project and say what I wanted to say about the fabric of society, about racial conditions in America and elsewhere, and about economic conditions and about just kind of the state of society, basically, and also the state of what we're going through in our world as we live. We live in nature, and like it or not, believe in it or not, nature is expressing itself in ways that we absolutely cannot control or legislate. There's a button that we cannot push, and it's sad, but I think that world leaders are not being completely honest with people in terms of not how dire it is. We know it's dire, but they keep putting these kind of promises of reductions of negativity in the atmosphere, and it never seems to materialize into anything. These COP 21, COP 26 now. These are just big parties in Belgium or Scotland or somewhere nice in the world where they stay in the finest hotels, they eat the best food, they network and do stuff, and talk, and very little, if anything, actually happens about the subject they're supposedly there to address. you know?
Right.
And I think that's just it's unfortunate, but that's where we are, man. The quality of the leadership of our planet is yeah, it's lacking. We could do so much better, you know. But if there's not a will to actually do better, if all you want to do is just sort of protect your pocketbook and your personal power and make sure that everything is okay for you, then uh, it's not going to work out. And you're watching it not work out. You're just watching this not work out because we haven't been able to cooperate and actually make decisive change to make things better for everyone. You know, there's too many self-interested parties, too many.
And so, is your goal with this album is to try and basically highlight those issues, and are you hoping that it can maybe, if not instill change itself, motivate others to instill those changes? Or
Yeah, at this point, you know, I realize that when people hear a piece of music that they like or resonate with, excuse me, just like me, that's automatically going to have some effect on them. That's going to affect their decision. So if you hear a song, if you hear the title track, Eyes Wide Open, and if you listen to the lyrics and if you resonate with the lyrics, and yeah, I agree with what you're saying there lyrically, that's automatically something, you know? That's automatically something inside the individual. And they will do, say, or create something of themselves. Um, to address the issue that they just resonated with. And I don't know what it'll be, whether it's going to be whatever kind of expression, something they might say, something they might do, something they might share with another person. I don't know. It's not important that I know. It's not
right.
important that I know. My job is done once I have it as a complete expression, then I share it with you. Pow, here's my song. Here's the music, you know, and it affects you the way it affects you. And there you go. Then it's on us. You know, I'm sort of, and when I say I've done my part, that I've done my part to create a song, but that's like an ongoing energy for me as well, too. It's just like, well, I've done my part. Now I'm done. I'm just walking. No, I'm not walking away from anything. It's just that's now the beginning of a new thread of energy along the same lines, but we're now just further down the road, you know?
Yeah, and like prior to the show starting, I know you and I kind of had a little bit of a conversation about the power of music, and it's how it affects people. I know I had mentioned a little bit about how it can affect people with Alzheimer's and things like that, dementia, and
Yeah.
bring them back to a certain place of reality and so forth. But you were also mentioning about potential healing properties of it. I'd kind of like to, if
Yeah,
you're okay, touching base on that. And
yeah. I was telling you before that when I was very young, I had read a book, excuse me, about Atlantis. And one of the things that they said happened in Atlantis was that they were a very advanced society in many ways. So medically, the way that they treated any sort of disease in the body was not through surgery, but through a combination of sound and light treatment. They would have these chambers that they would put you in, whether maybe you had cancer or whatever the thing was. So instead of cutting you open or putting someone else's organ in you to replace you, it would simply bathe your body, your whole situation, in this combination of the proper frequency or frequencies. And this didn't necessarily have to sound like a song as such. It could just be long sustained tones of a certain frequency and quality combined with a certain light. Everything, something in the color spectrum that would have a positive effect on your situation. So there'll be this combination of sound and color, and you would just be in this chamber, and they would bathe you in this for a certain amount of time, and that would have the effect of healing your affliction.
I think I've seen some other like videos, documentaries, things like that, where they are testing those theories as well, and
Yeah,
finding
yeah,
some ground with it. So I find that very fascinating.
yeah, yeah. I always have, and I think, as things go on for me, it's something that I may uh, delve into in a more concrete form. I may be doing things that or working with people who are working in that area, to come up with some modalities and things that can have that effect, because I've been interested in, I've believed it. I believed it as a concept, as a principle of something that can happen. I wasn't in Atlantis to to give you proof of it. I don't know anyone who was, but I believe in it as a concept. And yeah, I'm very interested to be a part of um, anything like that going forward.
And yeah, I mean that kind of poses an interesting question. Like, if a research company was to come forward to you and say, "Hey, do you want to be part of this?" You'd be like all in.
I would be very interested. Absolutely,
Yeah.
I would certainly respond to any request, and we would speak and take it from there. Yeah.
Okay. And so, with your new album, how long ago was it released?
It was released March of last year, March of 2020. I think late March.
Okay. And where can folks actually listen to it right now? Or because I think, you know what, I'm actually going to switch my little screen here because I know
Yeah.
I can also see it on the real David Sancious on YouTube for sure. The three of
Right.
your tracks, anyway.
Right. And the music you can find it's at Apple Music. I believe it's on Spotify. It's at a site called Headlong Music, Headstrong Music, excuse me. Um, and there's something else at the end of all the video clips. You'll see where it's available. But there's Apple, and there's uh, certainly Spotify and stuff. And oh, we also have LPs. The music actually came available as vinyl late last year. Yeah, so check that out. You have to go to our site. It's Headstrong Media, excuse me. So Headstrong Media is called. Headstrongmedia.com. So there's CDs and there's the vinyl there, and it's really high quality vinyl. So if you're one of those connoisseurs who like that, you can only get the vinyl at headstrongmedia.com. But the rest of the music, and there's posters and stuff there. But the rest of the music is on the other platforms.
Okay. Speaking of vinyl, do you still have? I'm assuming you probably do.
Mhm.
A vinyl copy of your very first album,
I do.
and is it opened, or did you keep it sealed?
Oh no, it's way opened. It's opened. Yeah, it's opened. No, excuse me. That would be good if someone had that, but no, I don't have a pristine, unopened copy of Forest of Feelings, but I do have a copy.
Okay. I
Yeah.
was just kind of curious if that was kind of a nostalgia thing where you just buy it, keep it, frame it, put it on a
You
wall.
know, that's for really smart people who think ahead and have like these nice, realize like, 25 years from now, this will mean something.
Well, and that's
But
the other thing, right? At
yeah,
that time, you probably had no idea you'd be at this point in your career to begin with, right? So
I wasn't thinking about any other point but the point that I was at.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, there was no thinking about, hey, when I'm like 68, which I am now, I'll be able to have something. It was just present moment.
And
Yeah.
I don't, do musicians ever really retire? I don't think they do they?
Not really. Not in your heart, you don't. You might have a situation where you might have some ailment physically that forces you to change what you do, or not have the kind of performance schedule or ability that you once had. But I think once you're an artist of any kind, whether you're a musician or a painter or a writer or whatever uh, form your art takes, once you're an artist, it's always in your heart,
Yeah.
and so no, I don't think you ever actually retire. I know that I don't personally. I don't ever want to stop. I'd like to be able to play some music on my last day of life. I don't know whether I'll be able enough to sit up at a piano and play something, or maybe I'll have a guitar, or maybe I'll be on my deathbed with a tambourine in my hand or something. I don't know, but I would like to be that lucid and that present to be able to actually make some music on the very last day of my life.
And do you teach or have you taught or?
I do. I haven't taught a lot because of my travel schedule. I think it's sort of not fair to have a bunch of students and you're zipping all over the place. You can't get them attention. But I've had a couple of students before my wife and I moved here. I was living in Woodstock in upstate New York, and I had a really very nice recording studio set up in the house. They're very spacious. And I had a student from Japan. He was an exchange student, and he was going to a music school in at NYU. And he contacted me and asked me if I would uh, give him a few lessons while he was on the coast. So I worked with him a bit. It was really good. We worked on. He wanted me to sort of critique his actual physical piano playing a bit, and he also had some questions about songwriting and arranging. So that was nice. And then I recently, since moving here, just about a month ago, I got contacted by a gentleman from Washington, D.C., who actually has a music school there, and he's been a fan of my writing and music for quite a while, and he asked me if I would be interested in giving him some lessons in arranging, which I've done. I've just started working with him, and that's very enjoyable and rewarding. So, and I think I am a bit more stationary now. I may just take on a few more students if people are truly interested and want to do that. But yeah, certainly the travel schedule because of the projects that COVID has canceled and the general nature of things. I'm available to put more time in that direction should it arise. You know.
Right. And have you had any experience at this point with doing, say, remote teaching through um, Zoom or whatever the case is?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. The
It
student
is,
that
yeah.
the student that I've just taken on, that's exactly how we're doing it. Like we are, it's like a Zoom situation, and he'll share files. You know, we'll share audio files and stuff and talk about it. But it's going to be more of that, actually. Yeah, virtual teaching like this. It's actually fun. You know, I enjoy it when everything's working right. Again, when all the connections are correct and
Yeah.
you don't have any technical issues. So yeah, yeah, it's good.
Okay. We're actually, yeah, past the 45-minute mark.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna end with a couple, hopefully fun questions. This might actually be your toughest question yet.
All right.
Um, is can you pick out one moment in your career which stands out above the rest?
Wow. One moment in the career. Okay. That stands out. Well, I'm gonna have to say the night that I got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That night, that whole night was insane because the event was major. Because on that same night, so I got to play with the E Street Band again for the first time in many years. That was amazing. And because Peter Gabriel was also inducted on that night, I got to perform with Peter Gabriel as well because I'm his keyboard player when he tours like that. So, you know, the songs that he wanted to do, we had just done this tour called Back to Front. It was like a revival of the Soul Tour. So I got to, at the theater, I got to rehearse with the E Street Band and everybody, get all set up with them. And then they took me to a whole other dressing room and I got changed and I got to rehearse with Peter and then play with him as well. So that was a super special night. It would have been great to either one artist or either event, but for all of that to happen in one night, for me to get inducted, to get to play with the band again, and to get to play with Peter Gabriel again all in one night was outrageous. It's
I can,
really good.
yeah, I can imagine that for sure. And that's actually one thing we never really talked about is your induction.
Yeah.
How did you actually find out about it that that was going to happen?
I got a phone call. I got a phone call, an email or something from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame saying that such and such was going to happen. Yeah, and that was it. I got, you know, time and date, and you know, here's where you need to be, and here's what time you need to show up, and yeah, it was just like that. And then I kind of find out the same thing. Oh, well, Peter is getting inducted too, and then I got a call from his management. Okay, well, we're going to fly over, and we're flying the drummer and everyone else over, and you know, we'll meet you at rehearsal and do it. So yeah, it was great. It was a pretty magical time.
Oh, I can imagine. Well, yeah. Well, actually, I can't really imagine, but yeah, no,
Hmm.
that must have been amazing for sure. I
Yeah.
think this will be the final question.
Okay.
Um, is there an artist or musician that you've always wanted to work with that you haven't had the opportunity to, and this can be somebody who's living or dead at this point. But if there was somebody that I think I know the answer, but I'm curious to see what you
So
say.
say, is there an artist, living or dead, that I would like to work with,
Yeah,
that I haven't worked with that I'd like to?
yeah,
Yeah, well, okay. The number one artist, the dead artist that I dream about working with would be Hendrix. Absolutely.
that's what I
That would,
figured.
yeah. As far as people living, there's a few people. I don't. It's That's going to be too hard to say. But oh man, there's so many people I'd like to work with one day at some point. That's a tough one. Uh, yeah, I'm gonna bail on that one. I'm sorry. I'm
That's
gonna
fair.
stay with the dead one. The Hendrix, hands down. I would love to have met him, and I would have begged him to let me be in his band because we could have got up to some mischief. Um,
Right.
Keyboard element that would have brought to it, and I could have played guitar at any time. We could have been easily reproduced all the guitar work on his albums, which just would have been crazy, crazy, crazy good. So
Absolutely. Well, unless there's some of the viewers, unless somebody wants to pop a question up, it has been pretty quiet on the question board. Although there was a question very early on, which
yeah.
I hadn't shared. Um, just for fun, I think I'll share it now. And the
Okay.
question was, are those Hawaiian chickens trying to get on the show?
Yeah, the answer is yes. They're wild. I live close to two farms. And I don't live in a neighborhood. I'm sort of out in the country, in farmland, and chickens and roosters are wild around here. So every once in a while, get one outside your window trying to get in on it. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, other than that, if nobody else has any questions, I would like to thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
It's been a pleasure, Gary. My pleasure.
And
Absolutely.
yeah, best wishes. And actually, I guess one other thing is you're currently working on another project.
I'm getting ready to start the next album, my next album, number 11. I know the title already. It's going to be called Prisoners of Consciousness.
Oh, nice. Oh, well,
Yeah.
and do you have a timeline as to when you think that might be coming out, or?
Ooh, well, as a whole complete package, probably not until maybe spring or summer. But what I'm going to do is start releasing singles before the whole thing is out. There's going to be at least 4 vocal songs, so I'm going to get those done and release them first before I present the whole thing as a package, the vocal songs and the instrumentals. But there'll be at least 2 instrumentals, maybe 3 or 4 again, like the format of Eyes Wide Open. But that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to release the singles first as singles, and then at some point next year, when the whole thing is done, I'll put it out as a whole package.
Okay, great, and best of luck with that. And as one of the guests or viewers just mentioned, break a leg on 11. So,
Thank you, man. I'll do my best.
and yeah, thanks again for being on the show, and we wish you the best of luck. I would like to thank everybody who is watching for watching, and we will see you again next week.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye bye.